thanks again for attending today. We're going to be talking about Fishbowl's linkTuner. We're just releasing our 3.0 version, and so I know there's a few people that are logged on that already own our 2.0 version, so they'll be getting this upgrade, and we'll, as we go through and show some things, it's going to look different. We're going to have some new features and benefits that will hopefully be of interest to you, and then for people that are just wondering what is linkTuner in general, we're going to be covering that as well. And my name is Rick Passolt, so I've been with Fishbowl for about 10 years, and prior to that, other PTC resellers, and I've been in the ecosystem a long time, but I'm more on the, I am on the sales side, so I'm not the one that's going to answer all the technical questions, and that's going to be Jody, who's been with Fishbowl now for coming up on a year now, and he's worked extensively on bringing our 2.0 up to our 3.0 product release with linkTuner. So Jody will be doing the demo. I'm going to go through a few slides and try not to talk too much here. So let me just get into my presentation here. Okay, so cool. We'll do a quick intro, do a little solution review, try to explain some of the use cases, and then really when Jody starts demoing, then I'll be a little more interactive with where these use cases come in and how customers are using linkTuner and day to day, week to week, how they're using it in their environment. But Fishbowl has been around since 1999. We have since day one been a PTC software partner, which means we can build software solutions that extend, automate, integrate PTC solutions to help customers be more efficient and more profitable. We're not a big company. We're 35, 40 people, so exceeding expectations and making sure our customers are happy are, it's number one on our list. And some of the things we've added in this new release is directly related to feedback we got from customers who were trying to use this type of solution on a global basis, which we will talk about later in the demo. So we've been around a long time. We've worked with lots of different customers, large and small, and projects have been large and small, even at big customers where maybe they only need a point solution. We've done a lot around Windchill over the past few years. Obviously today we're just talking about linkTuner, and the use cases that kind of map to this are, when you're getting ready to upgrade or migrate or go live, or just in a sustaining mode, how you're utilizing the tools that are at hand. So we'll talk to that today. The key to what I talk about is, if you can measure it, you can manage it. So for me, that's where, how can we collect data so we really know what's going on with the system? So the little user interface stuff that Jody will be able to show in the demo. But how we came up with this, and it really was years ago before we had a lot of the user interfaces that you're going to see. We had customers that had 100 plus, 300 plus pro engineer users, and they had no clue what's going to happen on day one. And then we had customers that came to us and said, we're going to upgrade. What's going to happen on day one of the upgrade? And then we had customers that said, I just want to measure things each month, and I want a way to benchmark it systematically the same way every month and see how things are working across the system. So, the admins or, the managers or directors that were coming to us, it was the kind of thing like users are saying, I think it's slower, or it seems slower. Well, that's one way of doing it, but we really want to measure that and, make sure that we can quantify it. So this is an older slide. I did put in the PTC monitor, the PSM that PTC came out with, and we have customers that are using, really, when you go through this, do nothing, hope it works. Okay, that's probably not the best approach. We've had customers that have taken 20, 30 CAD users, put them in a room, and do a bunch of different tasks in Windchill. But is that really the best, use of time and resources? Lots of customers, especially ones that have, if you have, many users that are not pro engineer users, this is where you get into like a JMeter or a load runner type scenario where you could script enough of the web user, usage and what they're picking and doing, and especially make it random enough so that it's not filling the cache, to put some type of burden on that system and then measure it. And when you start talking about measuring, PTC has formally released their PSM, and a great tool for monitor. It's a monitoring system, so it will monitor the system. But what it doesn't do, and what linkTuner does do, and we will show, is it's simulating an end pro engineer user and doing their day-to-day tasks, and allowing metrics to be captured both by linkTuner, but also if you are using PSM, you can capture other metrics through PSM as well. And then combine it. When you look at some of our largest customers, global customers, they're using a load runner, a JMeter, a linkTuner, a PSM, and in some cases other technology as well. So really being able to monitor the system, measure it so they can manage it. So again, simulating Pro E users, benchmarking process, running it against a 9.1 to know what it's going to look like in 10.1, and measuring so you can manage. There's a number of different tasks. Jody will get into the user interface of how you can filter things out, but what you're doing, sometimes maybe you'll just run a bunch of tests that are download and open, and then measuring that against different CAD users across various locations, which is really one of our number one use cases. Is I have customers that have, someone in India, someone in China, someone in Colorado, another person in Europe, whatever it might be. So the use case that we have is say you take 2 or 4 of your typical assemblies and drawings that users are going to interact with, and you are going to, run that exact benchmark through that location, and you're going to measure it and record it. Now let's run the exact same data set, the exact same operations on an equivalent workstation at a location, let's say in Arizona, and what happens there, and how does that measure against the first location, and then obviously let's do the same thing at a 3rd or 4th or 5th location, and let's report that back. For instance, a customer was going from 3.4 to Windchill. What are we going to see, timing-wise between our different locations? And so now you're able to show users, show managers, report back in meetings on, if we do this, we're going to see better results. Another use case that we see from time to time, and I do have a customer right now that is going from, that's talking about doing this. They're going from a 9.1 to a 10.1, but they're also going from 9.1 physical to 10.1 virtual, doing it all on VM. So they're interested in, what if we load this with, let's say, 40 agents, and our agents work like super users. I mean, they hammer the system. It would be like 200 CAD users easily. And let's just hammer the system, and let's see what happens and report back. And then we can do that against our 9.1 production, and we can do it against our 10.1 virtual, and give us our the benchmark. So you can mass load the system prior to it go live, as well as measuring that against your current production. And then we're seeing more of this now that more and more customers are on Windchill. They have a whole group of users that are either CAD users, web users, whatever it might be. But again, you get back to they're doing all types of random operations, and they may have they may have PTC System Monitor looking at what they're doing, but they might be working on completely different data every 10 minutes. But what we can do is take that, as I mentioned earlier, 3 or 4 typical assemblies with the exact same operations that we always do, and schedule it so it runs every week or every 2 weeks or every month, and run that through and just see what happens at 10 a.m. when everyone's hitting the system. How does that standard benchmark measure up while we're under load? Or we are a 24/7 Windchill system. How do these benchmarks across the globe look, time zone to time zone? So that's really what we're looking at, is we are simulating Pro Engineer users. So what Jody's going to demo here in a minute, configuring your server and your agents. We recommend picking that data set so that you can repeat your benchmarking. You run it and you analyze it. And you can analyze it with our tools. You can take our XML data and repurpose it. And then you can also do things with PSM and other ways to use Dynatrace to further break down the results. So Jody will go through, how do we configure the server, how do we add agents, looking at jobs and history and statistics, and going through what we're graphing. And a lot of these, the graphing and the different things we're doing and how we can filter was customer driven. The other thing that was very customer driven was, it's hard if we want to deploy agents globally. The 2.0 system was more difficult because of it could be virus scanner software. It could be, it's just the fact that how it was communicating wasn't a web-based application, which is what Jody can talk to far better than myself. So with that.
All right, here is linkTuner 3.0, the login page. It's a ASP.NET web application running on IIS. In this case, it's running on my laptop on IIS 7.5. It's a very lightweight application. Here's the architecture diagram. The console is kind of in the middle. It kind of organizes communication between the Pro-E agents and the Windchill instance, and it organizes jobs. The Pro-E agents communicate to the Windchill instance through HTTP requests and SOAP requests through Pro Engineer. So all of these agents are capable CAD workstations with 16 gigabytes of RAM or what have you. But the console itself is very lightweight. So here's the login page. Authentication is tied directly to the Windchill LDAP. If you add users, remove users, change passwords, everything is propagated to this console. There's no other configuration you need to do. So I'll just log in here to our Windchill 10 instance. Here is the main status page. It shows active jobs being run, all the agent statuses, everything that's going on, and then all the recent history that has occurred, the last 20 jobs or so, along with some light statistics over here. And I'll return to this page later when we're running a job. We're here on the configuration page. Is the basic settings for the application. It's tied to a single Windchill instance, in this case, WC10 instance. You can test that connection. Obviously, if you logged in, the connection will be good, but you can test it just to make sure. The database is stored in XML files, and that's just a location on the file system. I have that open up here. It's just organized by jobs, and there's an XML file for each run. And you can specify this to point at a network location if you want it publicly accessible or easily accessible. Same thing with the logs. It's just a simple text file, and you can view them in the browser pretty easily. Down here is the agent pool, where you define globally all the agents that you'll be using in your jobs by host name and port. These agents communicate with the console over a TCP socket connection. It's a pretty simple protocol. But again, these workstations are all Pro-E CAD stations, and they do communicate with Windchill, with our own API and with the ProEngineer SOAP protocol. I'm going to go ahead and add another agent. Call it write facts. Do a test, and it's ready to receive requests. The service is running on the station, so I'll save that. So all of these agents can now be assigned to jobs on the schedule page. I'll go to that next. Schedule page lists all the jobs that you will define, particular scenarios that you want to run against Windchill. They can be the same collection of objects over different locations, or they can be different object configurations with the same locations, just to test different groups of assemblies or parts. But you can enable or disable any of these jobs in the list when you need to. You can also delete them pretty easily. I'm just going to create a new one, call it Webinar Demo. And there's a few different types of jobs you can have. There's on-demand, which is just an at-will job that you can run whenever you feel like, just maybe a stress test, for instance. And there's also scheduled jobs, one time, daily, weekly, monthly. You set that whenever you want to run it. You got a date picker here. I'll just pick today, and noon is fine. I'll just run this at will, but I'll show this. Also, put in 24-hour time. It'll convert it back and forth, depending on what your preference is. Duration, you can specify if you want to run the job for a certain amount of time. In contrast, if you don't specify a duration, it'll run through all the objects that you specify just once. Duration is good for tuning a database. If you want to store SQL statements in order to run an auto-tune utility, you can do that for running it over an hour or two just to get that log in place. Over on the Operations tab is where you define the objects and all the operations that you want the link workers to do. It's easy to add objects here just by typing in the CAD name. You can specify just the CAD name if you want latest only objects. Optionally, you can also specify the revision and iteration, and it'll grab that as stored configuration if you want that. But you can add them like this. Go ahead.
Well, just what Jody's doing right now, I think one of the key things is when you are running those consistent benchmarks that I talked about, you will already have, that data set, that you do want to run, and and that's what you're going to pick. And I'll say that that most of our customers, what they're doing when they're doing the benchmarking, many times they'll create a product that is hidden to all the other users. They'll search, find the data that they want, maybe from some other products. They'll rename it and put it in this new product that only maybe an org or an admin can see, and then they'll run against that set of data so that, hey, we're on a production system, but we're not running against the same data that everyone else might be accessing or changing or whatever it might be. So that's, sorry, thought I'd interject.
That's fine. Thanks. In contrast, you can also switch the input. If you have a list of objects that you just want to paste in there, you can switch the input method to text input. You can just type in whatever you want to put in, and the input is very versatile. You can have a tab delimited list, or you can use spaces to separate objects. You can do the comma dot notation, and it'll convert that, so you don't have to worry about pre-formatting it at all. Add 2 assemblies and a bolt for our test. And this bolt is a family table generic, so you can have the option of including all the instances that are stored in it with this checkbox over here, in contrast to listing all the instances in this object list. You can just check that box. So over here are the operations that you can define that you want the workers to do. The first is search info browse, and this invokes Internet Explorer on the agent, and it browses to each of these objects to record the time it takes to actually load a page in Windchill. Revise will obviously revise the object to the next revision. Download and open will download and open the object in Pro-E. And create plot will create an HPGL plot on the agent. Upload and check in will upload and check in. Promote will promote the object to this target state down here. In this case, it would be prod change on our system. But in order to do all of these options, you need to enable previous options here. I'm going to do a revise, a download and open, and an upload check-in. And if you do the revise, a delete revision will also be added just to maintain data integrity. The Pro-E wait time is how long the link worker will wait for Pro-E to accomplish a task before it kills it, gives up on it. So by default, this is 10 minutes, which is adequate for our purposes. Context is the context of the parts that are listed here. It doesn't have to match the context for all of the parts, but it's where the workspace will be created, so you want to make sure permissions are good for this batch. I'm going to check this box, like I said, to include all the instances of bolts. Over here are where you assign agents from the pool onto a specific job. I'm going to add this one that I already defined, and then this new one that I added recently. And I'm set. I'll save this, add it to the list, and I'll go ahead and run it. While this is running, you can go to the status page, and it gives an active view of the job, what it's currently working on, and how long it's taking to work on a certain object. If you hover over the job, it'll highlight the agents that are currently working for it, and you can also hover over the agent to identify the job that it's working for. See, it just finished piston. This one moved on to bolt. Statistics down here are kind of a rolled up aggregate overview of all the jobs that are in the database. So it's useful if you have a collection of similar jobs that you can just get an overview of what's happening overall and what's happening recently. The trending average is the average over this history up here. So it's kind of a recent view of what has happened. You see that our job is finished successfully. If there is any error at all, it will show a red error, which is not entirely bad. It just means that one particular step failed. And you can see what happened by viewing this XML file. It's more or less a log of what occurs during the run. You can see the individual steps that have happened. You can see a warning here that for the check-in step, it's not supported for family table generics, which is expected. So you can see the XML, but you can click on this detail page to see a pie chart breakdown of all the time that has been taken by this particular run. It's interactive. You can hover over it to see a summary of each step, as well as the table down here. You can use to filter out certain actions. So you probably want to remove Pro-E Startup. It's not really a factor in what we want to measure. So it removes it from the chart here, and it also subtracts that from the total down here. You can sort by...
this can be really handy when you're, okay, create workspace might be important, but a lot of people might run, multiple runs on just, download and open and start measuring that between locations. So you can, get an idea where you can go across all of these, but start looking at what are the, what's the tallest pole in the equation here at different locations, and then starting to, turn the dials on Oracle and using PSM to help tune and then rerun and then remeasure and actually see if you're, is it getting better or worse, depending on what settings you have. You're able to repeat and measure.
Also filter up here with by agent and object. So you can see that write facts is a bit quicker with the, or Sucker is quicker with the upload and check-in, but that's probably a factor of which object that was uploaded. So you can also compare pie charts if you want to do that by clicking on this link down here, new window. And you can just do a side-by-side comparison, comparing crank to piston, if you'd like to do that. Oops. You can also sort all of these tables. Every table like this is sortable across the application, so you can manage data pretty easily that way. All these are sortable. I'm going to run the job a few more times just to get a history going. And I'll go over to the report page while it's doing that. So here's the interactive report chart that was kind of the basis of the new linkTuner 3 iteration. It's fully interactive. You can zoom in, zoom out, pan across. You can also marquee zoom using the control key and dragging. The axes are start time on the bottom here, when the run was started, and then the y-axis is the total time elapsed in seconds. So you can filter on series by clicking on individual series, just the name, or you can select and deselect by clicking on the color here. Also filter by operation. That'll subtract that particular operation from the total time. Whenever you need to, you can rescale the plot to get a better picture of the chart. There's a date slider on the top if you want to change the time frame that you want to look at. Say you want to see February to now. You can do that pretty easily.
And you can see some, different peaks and things in Jody's, sample data that he's, done over time. But, like the customers that we see, they have, they'll have a Brazil location, and they know what the threshold that they're looking for. They know it's slower than, the U.S. location, so they'll have a different threshold, and once they exceed that, then they need to look at it closer, and it could be just simply rebooting a server, or or a method server, or we've seen literally in a small campus, in Minneapolis here, where one building had a switch go out, and all the users were complaining, and you run a little bit of the statistics on it. It's like, well, something in your network is wrong, not necessarily Windchill at all. So different ways of being able to filter here that Jody's showing is certainly helpful.
In addition to the jobs mode, you can also invert the data by looking at operations over a certain job over here. So you can see that Chicago really has an issue with its agent configuration. It's got a huge spike in Pro-E startup time. But in this mode, you can click on points and get a summary, just like on the details page, of what has occurred during this particular run. You can, whenever you deselect the series, it will do the disabling and subtracting from the total time down here, so you can get the data that you want. You can click singular points. You can also hold down Shift and select multiple points, and this will add all these runs down to this table. Kind of constrained on space, but can compare these 5 runs against each other. You can do this across series as well. If you want to compare these 2 runs, just see them side by side here. Run this job one more time. See it completed successfully again. With comparable results. Okay, now that we have 3 data points, I'll go back to the report. And since I've been recording data since December, this is kind of difficult to see, but with the marquee zoom, you can just go in here like this a few times and get a nice view of the data. I can select these 3 points here, and over here is a compare selection button, where it will compare side by side all the points that you select with a bar chart. So here's the same table that's on the reports page. You can see they're very comparable over the 3 runs. You can do the same filtering over agent and over object. You can do aggregates, just the overall average, overall maximum, overall minimum of all these objects, and you can also do individual selections. In this table, you can just copy and paste into Excel if you want to manipulate it in any way. Do a paste special, do text, and there it is. So Canvas is an HTML5 canvas. It's fully supported in all modern browsers. Support for Canvas in IE6 and 8 is with Flash. So if you use IE, then you would need the Flash plugin as a requirement. But that's pretty much it. It works on IE6 up to IE10. Should say something about the managing the XML database. I brought up this just the file system. All the jobs are organized by job name within this XML directory that you define in the configuration over here. And if you want to remove runs, or if you want to just manage the database in any way, you can just delete and move around any files. And then once you're done, you can just click Rebuild Database, and it takes a second, and it rebuilds everything. So I can just remove everything that I did here, rebuild it, and it's gone. So easy to manage.
So just as a wrap-up, and there were a number of questions that came through, revolving around, some of the things around PTC and the PSM, and, that's using Dynatrace. We were talking to them. They were very interested last year in us, tying in with that solution, which certainly is a possibility. But, the key difference between what we've seen in the marketplace over the last, 8 years since we initiated our development was the fact that, we really needed to run pro-engineer operations. This, it can run on a workstation, it can run on a VM, whatever it might be, but actually run those operations at different locations and be able to capture and measure and compare over time. And so the version, and I know there were a number of customers on the line that are running our 2.0, and so 3.0 has been in beta, and they've been helping give us feedback, and this is going to become available to all of them. And then if there's any questions or follow-up, and a few people asking about pricing and those types of options, and it varies depending on, so many of our customers can do a ton with just running one agent, and and then others from time to time want to run 40. So the pricing varies based on that kind of model, and we're flexible. So what I suggest is on the screen is our my email, my direct line, general email. If you want to email anything technical to Jody, please reach out to us, and we'll follow up and get you the information that you need, as well as what I captured in the dialog box. So with that, just really appreciate your time today, and enjoy.